After a crazy NFL offseason, there's a lot of new faces in new places. So I think now is a really good time to make an NFL QB tier list. And we're going to go over some of these guys who are going to be in new situations. And some of these new guys, some of these rookies, guys who didn't play last year, like Trey Lance. So I think now is a really interesting time to see where these guys stack up against each other. So we're going to go from D to S here in our rankings, and then we have a don't know section for uh, some of these quarterbacks that haven't played yet. So we're going to start off with an interesting one here. Jimmy G, he's an S tier quarterback in the hearts of many moms out there, but I think for us, he's going to be a B actually. I think a lot of people would put him in C, but he's taken his team to a Super Bowl and some NFC championships. I mean, he's gone out there and won games for them. Jimmy G, as the quarterback of the 49ers, has won a lot of games. And, you know, I think that he's not a guy that's going to go out there and win games for you by himself, but with a really good defense, a really good head coach, and a dominant run scheme, I mean, he's done his job. And, I think the 49ers feel like Trey Lance can take them to that next level, but I think for the time that he's been the starting quarterback there, Jimmy G has done a pretty decent job of holding down that spot. So I think he's probably at the bottom of B tier, maybe top of C tier, but for now we're gonna leave him at B. Uh, we're gonna move on here to Matt Ryan. Of course, moving on to the Indianapolis Colts, we're gonna give him a B here. I think that Matt Ryan, once an elite quarterback, obviously has dropped off a bit in the last couple of years in Atlanta, but he's moving into a really good situation here with Frank Reich. And, they don't have a very explosive offense, but they have Jonathan Taylor, a workhorse running back who's going to take a lot of the load off of Matt Ryan, and they have a good defense. So I don't think they're going to ask Matt Ryan to do a lot, but I still think he can be a good quarterback. They have some questions at receiver right now, but we'll see if they go out and sign someone like Julio, who isn't signed at the time of this recording. So I think that Matt Ryan is going to put in a pretty productive year. All right, moving on. Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins is overly disrespected. I mean, I really think that Kirk Cousins is one of the greatest 1 p.m. Eastern quarterbacks of all time, but on prime time he struggles. A lot of people only watch Kirk Cousins on prime time and see him put up those poor performances. But if you really look at the statistics, Kirk Cousins has always been, near the upper echelon of QBs in many statistics and has just been really consistent. So I think Kirk is definitely not towards the top of A tier, but I think he's a super consistent quarterback. Has been pretty good for the Vikings over the past couple of years, and I think he really gets a bad rap, kind of like Jimmy G. But I think that Kirk is a much better quarterback than Garoppolo. So we're gonna stick him in A tier. Moving on to Kenny Pickett. I don't know. I mean, he's the most QB ready. I mean, NFL ready quarterback, but I mean, we'll see. He's getting placed in a good situation again. We don't know about their offensive line. There's some question marks there, but he's got a workhorse running back in Najee Harris. Some really good receiving options with, Deontay Johnson, and they drafted Calvin Austin and George Pickens. So I think that we'll see how it works out if how quickly he gets in there. I really think that people are overestimating how long Trubisky's going to be in there, and we'll get to that later. But I think that he's going to get in there pretty quick, but we'll find out if he's ready. Obviously, coming from Pitt, dream come true. We'll see if he's the guy for them. Moving on to Joe Burrow, Joe Shiesty. Is he an S? Is he an A? I mean, look, I'm going to put him at A, and I know a lot of people are going to be mad at this, especially because of the quarterback after him, who's hint, hint, he's going to be an S tier. Um, for me, the S tier quarterbacks are going to be the top five quarterbacks. And I think that Joe Burrow is just on the precipice of being there. I think he's the sixth guy for me. Um, Look, Joe Burrow put up incredible numbers, especially for the line he was playing behind. Um, I mean, obviously taking his team to a Super Bowl, had a really good year. I don't know if a lot of that run can be repeated. I'm not saying it was fluke, but I think that, a lot of things kind of went their way during that run. I mean, Ryan Tannehill just completely shut down in that game against the Titans. The Chiefs' offense just disappeared in the second half. I think a lot of that was a testament to how good their defense played. But I think Joe Burrow had a really good playoff run, and I think, you know, he'll be up there in the top five quarterbacks for many years to come. I just don't think going into next year he is a top five guy because I have this guy as the number five guy, Justin Herbert. I mean, you look at the size, the athleticism, especially for that size, the rocket arm. I mean, Justin Herbert, if you were to mold a quarterback to what you would want him to look like and be like, it would be Justin Herbert. I mean, there's a lot of questions about the leadership, but a lot of the players have came out and said he's a fantastic leader. Uh, just doesn't want to be in front of the camera, which is completely fine. I think that Justin Herbert will have a lot more success in terms of making the playoffs when he's given an actual defense. Because last year they really struggled to stop the run, and they finally picked up some pieces on defense to clog up the inside with Sebastian Joseph Day and Austin Johnson. They go out and get an elite pass rusher in Khalil Mack, and you pick up the best defensive back on the market with J.C. Jackson. So I think the defense is going to be shored up. Justin Herbert last year put up top five numbers in almost every statistical category. And if you just watched that Raiders game, you knew Justin Herbert is a special quarterback. And, I think this year might be an MVP year for Justin Herbert, but we'll see. I truly think that he has a chance to elevate to a top three spot this year. But moving on to his division rival, Derek Carr, we're going to slide him in between Burrow and Cousins here. Look, I think Derek Carr, he's another guy that's kind of underrated. He's put up good numbers that have increasingly got better throughout his career. I think that now adding Devonte Adams to Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow is that's a scary trio right there. I mean, they already had some pretty good weapons, and now you add possibly the best receiver in football. I mean, that's gonna let Derek Carr sling that rock, and I think he was already an A tier quarterback. I think that obviously only makes him better. I think Derek Carr is gonna shock a lot of people this year and have a really good year. Jared Goff, C tier quarterback. Maybe some people would put him in D, but I think that Jared Goff, he wasn't that great last year, but considering he was on the Lions, like, I don't really know what else he could have done. They gave him some more weapons now with Jamison Williams in the draft, so now he's got a pretty good receiving core with Jamison Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, a couple free agents they picked up, along with Hawkinson. So I think Jared Goff gets a bad rap, like a lot of these other guys, but I mean, he went to a Super Bowl, not really because of him solely, but uh, he was still able to lead his team to a Super Bowl that year with Sean McVay and the Rams. So I think Jared Goff is a C tier quarterback, probably going to end up being a backup in a few years, but he's all right. Move on here to Mac Jones. I think he's a B tier quarterback, probably ahead of Matt Ryan. Look, I think he's in a really good situation with the Patriots. I think that fits him perfectly. They're not going to ask him to do too much, but he can make a play or two for them. And, we saw him lead his team last year to a playoff berth. And I think that Mac, he's a pretty good quarterback for especially what his situation gives him. He doesn't really have a ton of great wide receivers. You know, he has Kendrick Bourne and Jacoby Myers, but look, I think he's a really good game manager who is not going to turn the ball over and will make a few plays for you that are going to help you win the game. So I think Mac Jones is a solid B tier quarterback. Moving on to Patrick Mahomes, S tier quarterback. He is the best quarterback in the NFL. I mean, he's gonna get tested this year, and I would not be surprised if his numbers dip without Tyreek Hill. But they did add a couple pieces, and Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and they drafted Sky Moore in the draft, so we'll see how that pairs along with Juju Smith-Schuster. But I think that Patrick Mahomes is still that guy, even though Josh Allen took him to the end in that playoff game. Mahomes gets the ball with 13 seconds left, still finds a way to get a field goal, tie that game up. I think that no one can challenge his dominance right now unless he falls off a little bit this season without his number one target, Tyreek Hill. And, a guy like Herbert or Burrow or some of these other guys coming up can challenge him for that number one spot. But I think he's still the top dog for now. Moving on to Mitchell Trubisky. I got to put him in D. The MVP is sadly a D tier quarterback here. I think they're going to give him a chance in Pittsburgh. I don't think they're going to name Pickett the starter day one. But, I mean, I think that he's not going to last very long as their starting QB because they have Pickett just waiting there, and he's got some good weapons there. But look, Trubisky, when he was with the Bears, you could say he was held back by Matt Nagy, but there was a lot of head scratching, throws and decisions that he made that really set the Bears back because they took Trubisky over Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes. And, even though he did make the playoffs that one year of the double doink, I mean, he still was a disappointment for many years in Chicago. So I don't know if we'll see a better version of Trubisky in Pittsburgh after he spent a year or two behind Josh Allen in Buffalo, but I don't think that it's going to translate to a very good season in Pittsburgh. I think he's going to be out pretty quick, and I think Pickett is going to take over probably after maybe even 6 weeks. So I don't think things are going to go well for Trubisky in Pittsburgh, but I think things are going to be just fine for Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay. Losing Devontae Adams is obviously tough, but I think that they're going to switch to a little bit more of a power run scheme here with A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones. And I think they're going to try and take a lot of weight off of his shoulders. But at the end of the day, it's Aaron Rodgers, back-to-back MVPs. I mean, he is just that bad, man. He is still a top 3 quarterback. I have him behind Mahomes, but I think that Aaron Rodgers undoubtedly is still going to be one of the best quarterbacks in this league for maybe even the next 2 or 3 years. Whenever he decides to stop playing football is when he'll drop out of that top 5. But moving on to Tyrod Taylor, Tyrod has had a lot of unfortunate events to happen with him. Got replaced by Baker Mayfield, Justin Herbert, Josh Allen. I mean, he's just had a lot of unlucky injuries being that bridge quarterback. Your leash is not very long, and he's kind of bounced around. He's been a solid quarterback while he's played, but not really anything to go out and win you a game, just more of a game manager who can try to make a 1 or 2 plays to help you win the game. But I think that Tyrod, especially, he hasn't been able to stay healthy too. That's also been an issue. So I think he's a decent bridge quarterback, but he's just got to be in D tier right now. Baker Mayfield up next. Where are we going to put Baker Mayfield? I think he's ahead of Garoppolo in B tier. I think that Baker at his best was an A tier quarterback. I mean, we got to remember he was in a playoff game a couple years ago, beat the Steelers handily, and then they went and played the Chiefs. Played a tight game, but I think that Baker has the ability to be one of those top guys, but I mean, he just really struggled these past year basically. They lose Odell, but it seemed like Odell was almost holding him back. Uh, and he just struggled all year, now having issues with Cleveland because Deshaun Watson comes in obviously to replace him. So he doesn't really have a home right now. I think Baker is kind of undervalued though at the quarterback position. I think he wants a bigger contract. I don't know if he's going to get a big contract at this point, but I think Baker Mayfield is a pretty decent quarterback. Maybe he goes to a team like Carolina and fills their gap there, but I think Baker Mayfield as a B quarterback is pretty solid considering, how well he played at points in his career. I just don't know if it's still in him, but I think B is a pretty fair spot for him. Jameis Winston, I mean, this is tough. He's a guy that I really think could move up to A because the talent is definitely there, but he's one got to stay healthy and two got to make sure he keeps those turnovers low. But Jameis, I mean, I think people fail to realize he can be a very good quarterback in this league if he can just limit those turnovers and stay healthy. But both of those things got to happen before he can move up to A. And I think that it's going to be interesting to see now without Sean Payton, Dennis Allen taking over for the Saints now. Can he continue, the success that he was starting to have there before he got injured, or will he return to the old Jameis and start throwing a bunch of picks again? So we'll see. But I think Jameis Winston is a really high B tier on this list. Maybe going to be low A tier by the end of the year, but I think that B tier at the top is a pretty good spot for him. Matt Stafford, he's A tier for me. You could argue S just because of that magical playoff run. I think he's in a very good situation with Sean McVay and the Rams right now. But I just think that Matt Stafford, time and time again, has proved to us that he is an elite quarterback. I think all the guys in A are pretty much the top of A tier is those guys are elite quarterbacks. They're just not top 5 quarterbacks. But I think Matt Stafford is, obviously one of the best quarterbacks in this league. He's got a rocket arm, can really command that offense, and showed his clutch factor against the Bengals, leading the Rams, at the end of that Super Bowl. But I think that he's still out of the top 5 for me. Had some questionable decisions, while he was with the Rams, but I think that if he can limit some of those picks, maybe he jumps back into the top 5. But I think for now, high A tier is a pretty good spot for him. Josh Allen, for me, second best quarterback in the league. What he did in that game against the Chiefs was nothing short of unbelievable. I don't know if he's going to be able to continue this high trajectory without Brian Dable, the offensive coordinator, who is now with the New York Giants as their head coach. But I think that, Josh Allen is just a physical freak of nature. I mean, just an absolute beast of a quarterback who has, once again, another rocket arm, big frame, can take hits in the cold there in Buffalo. And, just to see his improvement over the past couple of years is amazing. I mean, he went from many people calling him a bust to now, in my opinion, the second best, and in other people's opinion, maybe the best quarterback in the NFL. Moving on to Lamar Jackson. He is A tier for me, going to be behind Stafford there. I think Lamar, he battled that injury last year. The Ravens obviously injury riddled last year, but I think Lamar, he's a good quarterback. I mean, people say, oh, well, he's a running back. He can't throw. Well, yeah, but his running ability is elite. I mean, that's what makes Lamar Jackson Lamar Jackson. So, even though there's some inequities in terms of his accuracy or throw power, I mean, Lamar is still a pretty decent passer. I think people fail to realize that Lamar, and Mark Andrews is a pretty unstoppable duo. And you couple that with the fact that he's also got, running back skills at the quarterback position. I think that he has to be an A tier quarterback, upper A tier quarterback with an MVP. I mean, I think Lamar, he's not going to have a lot of weapons this year. So that's going to be interesting because they went off and shipped Hollywood Brown. So we'll see if Lamar can, find someone to throw to besides Mark Andrews. But maybe Rashad Bateman steps up for them. We'll see. I think Lamar, though, is still an A tier quarterback. Davis Mills, you know, I think Davis Mills is a solid C tier quarterback. Well, let me drag this. Dave Mills is a solid C tier quarterback. Really surprised me last year with the Texans. Put up some decent stats and frankly didn't have many weapons besides Brandon Cooks. So, I mean, I think Davis Mills at C tier is pretty fair. Uh, I think he'll improve this year too with some of the additions they made. So I think Davis Mills just behind Jared Goff. Maybe even if no, I think he's still behind for now. We'll see. Maybe he jumps up to B tier by the end of the year, but I think C tier is a pretty fair evaluation. Justin Fields. Losing Matt Nagy elevates him to B tier because Matt Nagy, horrific play caller. Like I said with Trubisky, he was holding him back too. But I think that Fields has showed flashes that, without Nagy, he can be a really good quarterback in this league. Has the legs to couple with his throwing ability, which is not that bad. I mean, he's among one of the more accurate QBs that came out of that draft class. So I think Fields is a solid B tier quarterback. I think we'll move him ahead of Jimmy G here. Still keep him behind Baker. I think that's a pretty fair assessment for Justin Fields there. Lower B tier, got some weapons with Darnell Mooney. They add, I think his name is Velus Jones in the draft. So they had a couple weapons there. Obviously, losing Allen Robinson is not going to help, but I think Justin Fields, pretty solid quarterback there. Trevor Lawrence, this one is probably going to be a pretty hot take because on Jacksonville, I think Trevor Lawrence is not going to be able to unlock his full ability. I mean, I do think he's better than Jimmy G though. And I said I was gonna leave Jimmy G in B tier. I don't know if I want to move him ahead of Jimmy G or move Jimmy G down. We'll leave Jimmy G there, but he's hanging by a thread there. Trevor Lawrence, he's not going to be able to really play up to his full capabilities with Jacksonville until they get that team fixed. They bring in Doug Peterson, which is obviously a tremendous upgrade over Urban Meyer. But not Justin Fields, Trevor Lawrence, he's shown flashes again that he can be a very good quarterback and proved in college that he was the best quarterback by leaps and bounds. But I think that Trevor Lawrence has the ability to compete one day to maybe even be a top 5 QB in the entire NFL. But with Jacksonville, limited weapons, he's got Christian Kirk now and Zay Jones, but that's definitely not enough to go help him win some games down there. I worry for his progression in his future, but I think that the talent alone has to put him in B tier. Malik Willis, I do not know. He had the most upside out of any of these quarterbacks in the draft, but we really don't know. He's going to be backing up Ryan Tannehill probably come in the next year if they let Tannehill go. So I think that he's a guy that is really going to be a mystery until we see him on the field because there were a lot of question marks that led him to drop to the third round. So, I mean, way more than Pickett, we definitely don't know how Malik Willis is going to turn out. Drew Lock, I think a lot of people would put him in D tier, but I think he's top of C tier. Uh, you know, Drew Lock definitely has issues with turnovers. I mean, that's probably an understatement. He has a huge issue with decision making, but I think that uh, he's definitely got the talent to be up there with some of these B tier quarterbacks. I mean, definitely can sling the football, but we got to see in a new situation with Seattle, he's going to have DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett if that really elevates his game, because I think that those two guys are better than Denver's top two guys. Obviously, Denver has a more complete receiving core, but I think that Seattle upgraded the line a little bit during the draft this year with Charles Cross. They draft Kenneth Walker. Maybe that'll help take some of the load off of Drew Lock. But I think that Drew Lock, the swaggiest QB on this list, but not the swaggiest in terms of ranking. He's going to be in C tier for me. Carson Wentz, he's a C tier quarterback. I don't know. I'd probably have him ahead of these guys, though. Carson Wentz really struggled last year to live up to expectations with the Indianapolis Colts. They missed the playoffs, and frankly, it was because of his performance that last week against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Just absolutely pitiful. I mean, he's going to get another chance with the Commanders this year, but I really think that Wentz is he's just not going to be able to replicate his success that he had that one season with Philadelphia. So I think that he's going to probably get replaced pretty quickly by Sam Howell, I feel like. And that's probably going to be it for Carson Wentz in the NFL. Probably remain as a backup that bounces around. So sad to see that happen, but I think that this is pretty much the end for Carson Wentz. Kyler Murray here, probably have him behind Lamar. I think Kyler Murray, wants a new contract, but he's got to prove that he can win in the playoffs if he's really asking for this mega deal. And so far, he got to a playoff game and got absolutely slacked by the Rams. So we'll see. But, obviously a little smaller guy, but I mean, he's lighting it in a bottle, just quick out there, making defenders miss on the run. So, I mean, he's kind of like Lamar, doesn't have insane throwing capabilities, but I think he's underrated in terms of his accuracy. I mean, he is a pretty accurate quarterback, just needs to work on being able to throw from the pocket, which obviously is not as easy to do when you're at that size. But I think that Kyler is still one of the top QBs in this league, definitely top 10 for me. So I think Kyler, maybe not top 10. He's going to be close. But he's definitely one of the top QBs in this league. And I think that we'll see how it turns out in Arizona. But, I mean, the talent alone, the athleticism, the speed, I think Kyler Murray is getting a little underrated. He's receiving a lot of hate recently. So I think he's an A-tier quarterback. Moving on to Sam Darnold here. Sam Darnold has gotten a lot of chances and hasn't been able to produce. He's going to be a D-tier quarterback for me. I mean, he's just seeing ghosts. There's nothing much to say about him. Just really got off to that hot start, 3-0, and I mean, they just collapsed there in Carolina, and I don't really think he's going to get another chance. I think that's it for Sam Darnold. Unfortunate way for him to go out, but I think that, it just never really translated to the NFL with him. Got placed in a really bad situation with the New York Jets, and now struggling with Carolina. So I think that they're going to move on from him, and I think that's pretty much it for Sam Darnold in the NFL. Now moving on to Deshaun Watson. He's an A-tier quarter. I don't know where an A-tier, though. This is tough because he's coming back from all the allegations. We'll put him behind Stafford, but I think that he honestly does have top 5 capabilities. I mean, when he left the league, you could have argued that he was a top 5 quarterback. Just like tremendous talent, one of the best improvisers in the game. I mean, there's not much else you could say about Deshaun Watson. He's just an insane talent. We'll see how that the off-field stuff plays out, but on the field, he is a stud, and we'll see how it turns out with him and the Browns. But I think that he is a very good quarterback in this league when he's able to play. Trey Lance, we don't know, but I think that Trey Lance could take the San Francisco 49ers offense to new heights that they weren't able to reach with Jimmy Garoppolo. But I think with Trey Lance, there's a high possibility that this offense does take a jump because he definitely has the physical capabilities to make some plays that Jimmy Garoppolo was just unable to make for many years there in San Francisco. So we'll see how it works out with him and Kyle Shanahan there. But I think that Trey Lance does have a chance of being a high B tier, A tier quarterback by the end of this year with San Francisco. Desmond Ritter, we don't know either with Atlanta. You know, they're going to be in a rebuild situation, so we'll see if they throw him in there. But they bring in Marcus Mariota to kind of be that bridge quarterback, give him one more chance in the NFL. But I think that Ritter will probably see the field at some point this season. But we don't really know how any of these rookie quarterbacks are going to turn out as proof of, Justin Herbert. And we'll get to Tua later on this list. But moving on to Ryan Tannehill. I think Ryan Tannehill is a B quarterback. Probably placed just behind Jameis, I feel like. You know what? I have to. I'm sorry. Jimmy Garoppolo, you're going to get moved down to C tier. But Ryan Tannehill, upper echelon of B tier. Look, he led the Titans to the number one seed in the AFC, but just crumbled in that playoff game, completely costed them the game with some of his decision making. And, there is just a limit on what Ryan Tannehill can do. And I don't know if he can take a team to a Super Bowl. And when you got a guy like Derrick Henry, you want to try and have one of those guys before the running back runs out of juice. And I don't think Ryan Tannehill is, that guy that's going to be able to take them to those heights. So they might move on to go give Malik Willis a shot. So we'll see how long Ryan Tannehill is able to stay as the quarterback of the Titans, whether he gets an extension from them or if he leaves after this year. But I think Ryan Tannehill's time might be running out in Tennessee, and we'll see if someone else is willing to take a chance on him. But let's move on here to Zach Wilson. I'm going to put Zach Wilson in C tier. I think that a lot of people are expecting big things from Zach Wilson this year with the addition of a guy like Garrett Wilson in the draft. And you still got Corey Davis there. You still got Elijah Moore there. So we'll see how it works out with Zach Wilson. But, not great things from him last year. Certainly looking to bounce back and improve this year. Dak Prescott, definitely an A-tier quarterback. He's really put up solid numbers with the Cowboys these past couple of years, and I think that he's another one of those guys that's kind of underrated, putting up good stats with, a good group of guys around him. He's going to lose Amari Cooper this year, so we'll see how he does with Gallup and CeeDee Lamb. But I think that Dak Prescott is a really solid quarterback that will continue to excel under Kellen Moore, and I think the Cowboys will be just fine, at least offensively. So I think Dak is an A-tier quarterback. Russell Wilson, another one of those guys I think is a little underrated. I think that Russ is probably in the middle of these guys right here. I'll throw him right there ahead of Deshaun behind Matt Stafford. It wasn't his best season last year, but, he obviously had an injury, so that affected how much time he could see the field. And I think Russell Wilson, when healthy and playing up to his full capabilities, is a top 5 quarterback. But I don't know if he still has that juice left in him. He's going to be placed in a really good situation with Denver. Really tough division, but really good team around him. And we're going to see if Russell Wilson can make one final Super Bowl push here. I don't know if he's going to be able to, but he's definitely going to be able to. He's going to be given the chance to. But I don't know if he's going to be able to really ascend to those levels that they need him to. Matt Corral, we don't know. Rookie quarterback. Pretty good at Ole Miss. He's one of the guys I kind of like coming out of the draft, but obviously suffered that injury. So we'll see how he turns out. But Obviously, don't know at this point. Uh, Sam Howell also don't know. Guy coming out of the draft, pretty decent at North Carolina, but he's gonna back up Carson Wentz. Maybe get an opportunity there with the Commanders, but uh, we'll see how long Carson Wentz goes for. Maybe an injury happens or something, and Howell gets a chance. But right now, can't really rank him. Moving on to Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts is a B tier quarterback. I'm not worrying too much right now about where I rank them, but we'll just throw Jalen Hurts there. I think that Hurts is a really underrated. I mean, I'm saying underrated a lot, but I think that a lot of people think that Hurts doesn't have throwing capabilities right now, and I think he's obviously not the most talented in terms of his accuracy and throw power, but I think that Hurts is developing as a decision maker. He's making better decisions as games go on. And I think that obviously his legs provide a huge asset to that team. They're more of a power run team in their style. And I think Hurts kind of fits their scheme really well. And I think that he's going to be there for the long term. A lot of people think that, they're going to move on after this year. But with A.J. Brown now, Devontae Smith, I think that he's going to excel and he's going to be a pretty good quarterback for them this year. Maybe even win the division. So I think B tier is a really good spot for him. Tua. He'll be at the bottom of B tier. I'll save him from C. Been a huge disappointment so far for the Dolphins. I mean, they drafted him number 5 overall, and I mean, look, you could say Tua's been all right for them, but when Justin Herbert is drafted behind you, that's a tough spot to be in, especially when you've put up the numbers you have in your Tua. So he obviously gets Tyreek Hill this year. Huge addition to that team. Should really take their offense to new levels, but I don't know if Tua's going to be able to keep up with him and really bring the juice to that offense that he's been kind of lacking these past couple of years. We'll see if he can take them to the playoffs, but I think right now B is a pretty fair spot, really fair spot for Tua there at the end of B tier. I think Tom Brady's S tier. I mean, he's still that guy. You can't doubt the GOAT. He's just put up insane numbers for how old he is. I mean, Tom Brady has just been lights out year in and year out, and with the Buccaneers, still continued that success, still taking his team to the playoffs. I think that the number 4 quarterback in the league is a pretty fair spot for him there. Daniel Jones, he's a C tier quarterback. Oh, it's not letting me drag this. Oh, what's going on? C tier quarterback. I mean, not much to say about Daniel Jones. Another one of those guys that's been kind of disappointing in the NFL. There's a lot of question marks of why the Giants drafted him so high, and I mean, Daniel Jones has just not really taken that next step as a quarterback. Showed flashes at the beginning of his career, but last year was super disappointing over there with Joe Judge. He's going to now get Brian Dable, so we'll see if he can take a leap into that next step. But right now, I think he's a C tier quarterback. And finally, moving on to Marcus Mariota, I think he's a C tier quarterback. Got a chance with Tennessee, didn't really work out. Decided to sit back with the Raiders and back up Derek Carr, got a little bit of playing time. I think that Mariota is going to be a solid bridge quarterback for the Falcons, but at the end of the day, he's not going to be able to really do much with that roster. So I think he's a C tier quarterback, and that wraps up our list there. As you can see, I do think that right now in the NFL, there are a lot of good quarterbacks. I mean, there's guys like, Kyler Murray down there at, what do I have, number 11 overall. I think a lot of teams would be pretty happy with Kyler Murray as their quarterback. So I think that these guys at the top obviously are, you know, not to say that they're not the definite top 5 best quarterbacks, but I think that there's some leeway between, 1 through 10 and where people rank them, because there really are a lot of talented quarterbacks in the league right now, especially in the AFC with all that young talent. So I think that it's a really exciting time to be an NFL fan with all these talented quarterbacks that can launch the ball and run around. And I think that, you know, you're going to struggle if you don't really have one of those top tier guys. And you're kind of stuck in a situation where you have some question marks at the quarterback position. You don't know if your guy can take that next step to be up there with the top guys. So I think it's going to be interesting to see if we see any more moves happen, maybe with Carolina or some other teams that need a quarterback, like maybe Seattle. They don't go with Drew Lock. We'll see. But I think that, things are pretty set right now. And I think there's just a lot of really good quarterbacks in this league. I think we'll see some guys take some jumps here. Maybe a Jameis Winston, from B tier up to A tier, or Justin Herbert. Maybe he climbs up S tier, or Joe Burrow. I mean, there's just so many good quarterbacks in the NFL. We'll see how it turns out. But that's going to do it for this video. If you found it entertaining or thought it was interesting, maybe leave a like and go down and subscribe. But that's going to be it. Peace out.